You've been calling it confusion, but God calls it clarity. You're lying in bed at night, scrolling through old texts, replaying old memories, wondering how something that once felt so right now feels so off. And you keep telling yourself, maybe it's just a phase, or maybe they'll eventually come around, or maybe it's just me overthinking. But what if it's not just you overthinking? What if it's God underlining the silence you've been deliberately ignoring? Because here's the unvarnished truth. Peace doesn't leave without a very specific reason. When God pulls his peace from a particular place, it's not to punish you. It is entirely to protect you. You've been trying to fix something that God never instructed you to carry. You've been attempting to hold together what God has been gently and then forcefully pulling apart. And I know it's incredibly hard. I know it hurts to your core. But pain is sometimes the echo of God's soft whisper saying, "This isn't your destination." You keep praying for answers, but you've already received them. They just didn't look like what you had expected. You thought an answer would be a clear voice from heaven or a vivid dream at night, but sometimes God answers through absence. He answers through profound unease. He answers through that heavy, unsettling feeling in your chest that something isn't right and hasn't been for a long time. And the problem is, we confuse comfort with genuine peace. Just because you're accustomed to them doesn't mean they are good for you. Just because the connection feels familiar doesn't mean it's divinely sanctioned. Familiar pain is still pain. Familiar chaos is still chaos. You can't keep staying in dysfunction just because you've become habituated to it. You can't call it loyalty when it's actually bondage. The peace left a long, long time ago, but you stayed, hoping, believing, convincing yourself that if you love harder, pray longer, give more of yourself, they'll finally see you for who you are. But the truth is, they saw you the whole time. They just didn't value what they saw. And God is not going to allow you to stay in a place where your identity keeps getting starved of nourishment. He loves you far too much to let you keep shrinking yourself just to fit into someone else's small, restrictive view of who you are. So now God is doing what you wouldn't do yourself. He's letting things fall completely apart. The conversations are dry and lifeless. The energy is palpably off. You feel like you're fighting this battle entirely alone. And deep down, in your soul, you know this isn't what God promised you. Because the blessings of God are always accompanied by peace, not by immense pressure. God's hand will never call you to compromise your very soul. But still, you keep going back. You keep remembering the good times, even if they were few and far between. You keep romanticizing the potential of what could have been. And maybe the most dangerous thing you can do is fall in love with what could be, when God is trying to show you with glaring clarity what truly is. So what do you do when the peace is completely gone, but the memories stubbornly remain? You trust God more than you trust your feelings. You believe the whisper of the Spirit over the deafening noise of your loneliness. You let go of what's no longer growing so God can bring in what's meant to grow you into a new person. Because here's what nobody tells you. Peace is not a passive state. Peace is a powerful force. Peace is a person. And when he walks out, it's a definitive sign that you're staying somewhere he never built. You were not made to beg for what's already rightfully yours in Christ. You were not made to keep choosing someone who never chooses you back. And you were not made to call love what is really just fear wearing a deceptive mask. That's why you've been so incredibly restless. That's why you've been irritable and on edge. That's why your spirit absolutely refuses to settle. Because peace has a very specific sound, and this ain't it. So today, make a firm decision. Stop asking God to bring peace to a place he's already completely vacated. Stop asking for closure from someone who was never truly open to you in the first place. Stop clinging to what keeps costing you your joy, your sanity, your very essence. You don't need another apology. You don't need another sign. You just need to believe, deep in your heart, that when peace walks out, God is walking you directly into something immeasurably better. You're not being abandoned. You're being aligned with your true purpose. You're not losing love. You're losing a carefully constructed lie that only looked like love. And if peace left, maybe it's time you did too. You've been praying for a sign, but God's already sent you 5. And still, you're standing there asking God, "What do you want me to do?" While you stand in front of a door He's closed 10 times over. The truth is, it's not that God hasn't spoken. It's that you didn't like the way He said it. He didn't speak with thunder this time. He didn't split the sky or send an angel to your bedroom with a new message. Instead, He let the same soul-crushing fight happen again. He let the same painful disrespect hit your heart. He let the same conversation leave you feeling utterly small and insignificant. Why? Because God doesn't always speak in new words. Sometimes He simply repeats the old ones, only louder and more emphatically. And here's the hard truth. When God repeats Himself, it's not because He's being unclear. It's because you're simply not listening. You keep asking for clarity, but God has given you confirmation over and over again. You saw the red flags. You felt the oppressive weight in your chest. You heard that little voice deep inside say, "This isn't it." But you called it doubt. You called it fear. You called it insecurity. What if it wasn't any of that? What if it was God? What if it was His mercy, carefully disguised in discomfort? See, repetition is a divine mercy. When we miss the message the first time, He'll send it again in a different, undeniable way. Through a friend's compassionate warning, through a sermon that hits a little too close to home, through a quiet moment that leaves you wondering why you're always the one giving, always the one forgiving, always the one fighting for something that's no longer fighting for you. And you're frustrated, not because you don't know what God is saying, but because deep down you know exactly what He is saying. Let go, move on, release them. That's why you remain stuck in the cycle. That's why you keep going back to what is already irrevocably broken. You're not stuck because you lack answers. You're stuck because you've been stubbornly avoiding action. You keep asking for new direction while ignoring the old, repeated instruction. And now it's showing up absolutely everywhere you look. The pain, the crushing tension, the bone-deep exhaustion. That's not random. That's God repeating the same message to you. This is not where you belong anymore. You see, God loves you too much to let you stay in a place that is so beneath your divine calling. And He'll keep turning up the volume, not to punish you, but to position you for something greater. Because sometimes we don't make a move until it hurts so much that staying is no longer an option. So, He sends reminders in conversations you didn't expect to have, in songs that deeply mess with your emotions, in feelings you simply can't shake, in a peace that vanishes every single time you go back. And if you won't listen to the gentle whisper, He'll speak through the gaping wound. He'll let you get tired enough, drained enough, profoundly disappointed enough, not because He doesn't care, but because He's been trying for so long to break you free from something that's actively breaking you down. And when God starts repeating Himself, it's a very clear sign that the next move is yours to make. He's not going to beg you, He's not going to force it, but He will keep showing you the truth until you're finally ready to walk in it. So stop calling it coincidence. Stop labeling it confusion. Start recognizing the pattern for what it is. You're not just going through the same thing repeatedly, you're deliberately ignoring the same divine word. And if you've ever wondered why the pain keeps showing up in different outfits, it's because God will change the form of the message to deliver the same, freeing truth until it finally sets you free. So don't wait for the 10th heartbreak to finally do what you knew you needed to do after the very first one. Don't wait for your peace to be completely gone before you finally walk out of what God already told you to leave. Because the repetition is the revelation. God is speaking, and this time, He's waiting to see if you're finally ready to listen and act. And when you do, when you stop running from what you already know to be true, when you finally say yes to what your spirit has been screaming for, that's when the real shift happens. That's when the healing starts. That's when the cycle breaks once and for all. God's not trying to confuse you. He's been incredibly clear, just repeated. Now it's your move. There's something truly suffocating about staying where you no longer fit. You've been actively shrinking yourself to keep a false peace, dimming your own light so they won't feel threatened by your brilliance, biting your tongue so their deep insecurities won't be triggered. And all the while, the version of you that God is calling out, the one that's bold, healed, growing, and free, keeps getting shoved into a box you were never ever meant to stay in. You don't even recognize yourself anymore. You laugh smaller. You dream less. You second guess everything you say or do. And it's not that you lost your passion. It's that you've been living in a place where your genuine growth is seen as a threat, not a beautiful testimony to God's power. They liked you better when you were broken because broken people are so much easier to control and manipulate. But now that God's been stirring something powerful inside of you, now that you're starting to truly see your worth, your value, and your divine calling, suddenly you're too much. No, you're not too much. They just simply refuse to grow with you. And that's the fundamental problem. You're trying to grow deep roots in soil that no longer supports your sacred purpose. You're asking people who actively benefit from your weakness to celebrate your newfound strength. You're hoping they'll understand a version of you they're not even willing to make the effort to meet. But here's what you absolutely have to realize. If it costs you your growth, it is far, far too expensive a price to pay. God didn't call you to stay stuck so someone else can stay comfortable. You've been playing it small, so they won't feel left behind. But what if the very reason they're holding you back is because they already know they can't go where you're going? And instead of accepting that, they'll subtly sabotage you with backhanded compliments, with silence when you succeed, with guilt trips. Every time you try to take a step forward, you think you're keeping the relationship alive. But in reality, you're keeping yourself buried, and God is whispering, "That version of you they love so much, I've outgrown it, and so have you." That's why you've been uncomfortable lately. That's why the same conversations drain you. That's why your spirit groans when you're around them. You're not being dramatic, you're being stretched. And stretching doesn't feel like a blessing. It feels like breaking, but it's necessary for becoming. You keep trying to honor connections that expired when your calling evolved. But you can't stay loyal to what's limiting you and still expect to be used by God fully. At some point, you've got to decide, do I want their approval or do I want God's anointing? Because the two rarely come packaged together. And I know it's hard. You've invested time, energy, and love. You shared your dreams, your fears, you made plans. But sometimes the people you planned forever with aren't built for the next chapter. And if you keep dragging them into seasons they weren't designed for, you'll end up stuck and blaming God for a prison you kept unlocking with your own hands. You're not growing because you're not planted anymore. You're buried. And there's a difference. God plants you in places to build you, but people bury you in places to box you in. And the moment you realize that someone is more interested in the old you than the new you, that's the moment you have to choose. Am I going to keep pretending I don't see the shift, or am I going to move forward in obedience? Because here's the truth, not everyone is assigned to your destiny. Some people were only assigned to your development. And once the lesson is learned, the relationship has served its purpose. So stop apologizing for outgrowing what you prayed to grow out of. Stop watering dead connections, hoping they'll come back to life. Stop playing small in rooms God gave you the voice to command. You were not created to stay stuck just because it's familiar. You were not called to carry someone else's comfort while your own soul suffocates. You were made for more. And if your growth offends them, let it. If your evolution threatens them, let it. You weren't built to fit in a space that God is calling you to rise out of. So rise, grow, break free, and don't look back. You keep asking God to heal your heart, but you won't let go of what's breaking it. You cry out for freedom, yet your hands are still clinging to the very thing that keeps you bound. And it's not that God hasn't heard you. It's not that He hasn't started the healing. It's that healing can't happen when you keep sipping from the same cup that made you sick in the first place. You say you want to move on, but you keep checking their status. You say you want peace, but you keep replaying the pain. You say you're done, but your heart still whispers, maybe one more chance. But how can God pour in restoration when you won't pour out the residue? It's like asking for fresh air while refusing to open the window. You want change, but only if it doesn't cost your comfort. You want deliverance, but only if it doesn't require distance. You want healing, but you don't want to let go of the person who keeps wounding you with the same words, the same silence, the same cycle. And you wonder why you still feel stuck, why the peace never lasts, why your prayers feel heavy. It's because you're asking God to make you whole while holding on to what's making you hollow. You don't need more prayer. You need more obedience, because there's a moment where healing isn't waiting on heaven, it's waiting on you, waiting for you to delete that number, waiting for you to stop romanticizing pain and calling it love, waiting for you to surrender what's already surrendered you. God can't bless what you won't release, and He's too good to heal what you keep infecting. He won't put a bandage on a wound you keep reopening. He won't force your freedom, but He will wait for your surrender. And I get it. Letting go feels like a loss. Walking away feels like weakness. You thought they were the one. You built your identity around them. You saw a future, but maybe God let it break because you were building on borrowed hope. Stop sitting here in the tension, asking God to fix what He's trying to free you from. Stop begging for the thing He already removed His peace from. And deep down, you know it. You feel it. You hear it in the silence. You sense it in the restlessness. God isn't ignoring you. He's inviting you to trust Him with the pain you don't understand, inviting you to believe that healing begins where pretending ends, inviting you to stop asking Him to revive what He's already buried. You're not healing because you're still holding, still hoping they'll change, still waiting for closure they'll never give, still trying to fix what God never told you to carry. But listen, healing isn't passive. Healing is hard. Healing is tears. Healing is discipline. Healing is deleting the conversation you keep rereading for false comfort. Healing is walking away when everything in you wants to stay. It's refusing to feed what no longer fuels your future. Because the truth is, you don't need them to apologize. You don't need them to understand. You don't need another round of false promises and short-lived effort. You just need to be done. God is not trying to take something from you to hurt you. He's trying to take it because it's hurting you. And the moment you release what's been poisoning your spirit is the moment His healing can finally flood in. So, no, you're not crazy for feeling what you feel. You're not weak for wanting to go back. You're not broken beyond repair, but you will stay broken if you keep holding what was never meant to heal you. You can't drink poison and pray for strength. You can't cling to chaos and cry for peace. You can't stay stuck and still walk in purpose. At some point, you've got to choose the pain you know or the healing you haven't tasted yet.